Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at that upcoming pattern. Also, we have an Arctic blast that is possible in the foreseeable future. Now, before I get started with this video, though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather-related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. Now, I would also highly recommend that you check out our very exciting store in the description and in the pinned comment down below, and then also our very awesome Patreon page where we just made a post about an upcoming potential big snowstorm in the foreseeable future. You're going to want to check that out. That's going to be in the description and in the pinned comment down below. Anyway, for today's comment of the day, I want to know, when do you think our next major snowstorm will be? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Let's get straight into this video, and first things first, we're taking a look at about now. And as you can see, we have some colder air down there for the southeast. That's where most of that below normal temperatures are set up, but basically everywhere else is looking at about warmer than normal conditions at this point. Now, by the time we reach about 7 a.m. there on Tuesday, January 19th, so we're taking a pretty big leap here. The southeast is still cold, but then we see some cold entering into the upper Midwest, the Northwest, the Northeast, but you can see it's a very sloppy pattern. There's just warm kind of just scattered around and cold scattered around with no real rhyme or reason to what's going on here. This is the type of pattern where we don't see a lot of storminess. There's no clear jet stream of where that storm would come from and where it would go. I don't foresee any snowstorms as long as we're in this pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on towards about the 21st, where the pattern is going to become a little bit more clear according to this model. Now, it is worth mentioning for educational purposes, I am using the European ensemble model here, and I'm doing this because this is going to help us get a little bit more accuracy and a little bit more insurance as we get into the longer range. Considering there's about, I think, 50 members to the European ensemble model, we're getting all those different opinions put together, and we're getting the mean average of that, and that's just really ensuring that we're getting a more, I guess, moderated opinion here, and it's going to give us a much more accurate look. Now, we might see a more extreme pattern, in which case this is not going to show that, but it's going to give us an idea of what could come, but it could be more or less extreme than what this is showing. Most likely more, considering this is going to be very, very averaged out. I'll show you guys that in just a moment. But we're taking a look at about the 21st, and you can see that there is some warm temperatures for the central United States, but for the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, we're taking a look at some colder than normal conditions heading in. And then by the time we reach the 22nd, we see kind of a southeast ridge setup. We've been anticipating that to happen since we were talking about the winter forecast, but it really has not been the case. Matter of fact, it's been quite the opposite. We've seen some colder than normal conditions down there for the most part, but we're seeing some colder conditions move into the Pacific Northwest by this point, with warm in the east in general. But by the time we reach the 23rd, we see our next cool down come through, and this is kind of that Arctic blast I was talking about, the first one at least. We see some pretty cold temperatures moving into the upper Midwest, at least I would say 5 to 15 degrees below normal, mostly 10 to 15 in those greens, so pretty potent cold air there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move on, and we're going to move on towards where that is going to reach the East Coast and become even more potent for the upper Midwest and be just like a legitimate Arctic blast, and it's not too far out. So here we are by about, I would say, 7 a.m. there on Saturday, January 23rd. So we're only about 6 days away from it, which is very plausible and very just a good range for a temperature anomaly forecast like this. Really, once you get 10 days out, plus that's where you start to really question the accuracy and then like days 7 to 10, I would say, is when it's like moderately accurate, but after days 10, you want a very strong signal to be confident in it. So this is a good range. I feel like we have confidence that there will be some cold blasts that enter into the central, especially the north central, and then in through into the east coast of the United States. We can see that the west coast is becoming colder by this point. That means there is a negative PNA. We're going to take a look at the teleconnections at the end of this video where you will see that, but this is evident that there is a negative PNA by this point on the 23rd. By the 24th, you can see a big ridge, or I guess I usually call it a dome when it's this type of a pattern. It makes kind of a dome shape over the south central United States. I would say that's a heat dome right there, but basically just a ridge that is set up over the central United States. So we see cold on both sides, kind of horseshoeing over that dome there. Pretty considerably cold actually on both sides there, those greens indicating pretty well below normal temperatures. Let's go ahead and move towards 7 a.m. on Monday, January 25th. So we're getting closer to the end of the month, And you can see we really fully engage into that negative PNA. We do have some colder than normal conditions up there for the Northeast, but generally, mostly the cold has moved into the western United States by this point, which we have been expecting for a while. We've expected that PNA to actually flip at a certain point, and this is definitely as a result of that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move on. And we're going to move on towards about 7 a.m. on Tuesday, where we're going to see this pattern break up a little bit, and eventually it's going to fully flip. So we're going to watch that happen in just a moment. All right, now here we are taking a look at about 7 a.m. there on Tuesday, January 26th. As you can see, that cold is really potent up there for the Pacific Northwest and through the northern plains. I think this could be pretty good for snowstorms in that region. We've been anticipating that this would be a snowy year for you guys up there, so I think we're fully going to engage into a pattern like that finally. For you folks up there in the Pacific Northwest and the northern plains, I think we will get some opportunities there. With this pattern also, I think around the 26th, we could have a storm that moves through the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. That's actually the one we talked about on our Patreon page. Again, you might want to go check that out. It's a pretty big signal for a storm, and the models have been quite consistent with it. The jet stream would generally move from the Ohio Valley and then up the East Coast, and then there is some blocking, so I think it would move up and turn up the East Coast. That would be a Miller B nor'easter type storm track. I am watching for the potential of that. Also, severe weather in the southeast with that southeast ridge setup. As cold fronts move through there, that's typically when we would see a big winter severe weather event. So I think we're going to move into a pattern where those are going to become more likely as well, which I'm looking forward to being able to live stream that type of stuff for you guys. It's been a long time since we've had a severe weather event that's, very good to talk about in that sense. So I'm excited to make live streams like that for you guys moving forward. So here's by about 1 p.m. there on Wednesday, January 27th, and you can see there is some colder air moving towards the eastern United States now by this point. Still cold out west, but we're seeing that shift towards the east. Again, we're still looking at an ensemble model, so to see a flip this far out is actually a very good sign that they are, it is quite accurate, considering we have 50 different opinions basically showing this, the mean average of them at least. There is probably some that don't, but the mean average is. So by the time I reach about 1 p.m. there on Thursday, the 28th, you can see it is basically equal. The west and the east are basically equally as cold by this point. And then 7 a.m. on January 29th, you can see it's actually more cold in the east than it is in the west. So we kind of move back towards a pattern of cold in the east, and that PNA is probably crossing back closer to positive by this point. Again, we are going to look at those charts in a minute, so we will be able to confirm that. But I'm guessing just based on this surface map that it is. Then by the time we reach about 7 a.m. there on Saturday, January 30th, you can see we have a huge cool down for the east, and that west region is more closer to normal. And then by the time we reach about 7 p.m. there on the last day of January, you can see it's basically cold on both coasts, and then kind of warm for the central United States to close out that pattern. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to move on, and we're going to take a little bit of a look there at the GFS model just to see a little bit more of a less averaged out opinion to see how extreme this could be. And then we're going to get into those teleconnection charts, like I said, and then we're going to close out the video. All right, so here we are taking a look at about the 22nd at about 1 a.m. As you can see, that southeast ridge looks a little bit more extreme once you take a look at it on this model, because this doesn't have 50 separate members. This is just a deterministic model. This is just a single model calling for this. So that's why it's a lot more aggressive. This would be a lot more similar to what you would actually see on the surface, but the accuracy is lower because you're only getting one opinion. So it's kind of like you gotta pick and choose what you're going with, because there's downside and upside to choosing one or the other. Obviously, I choose to use ensembles basically as we get beyond 7 days typically. But the deterministic models are usually pretty good within 7 days. Here we are by about 1 a.m. on the 24th, and this is when you can see there is that dome down there for the south central. You can see it looks a lot different here. We see cold on both coasts by this point. Definitely a major Arctic blast there for the East Coast. I mean, about 10 to maybe even 20 degrees below normal there, so quite potent cold actually. And then by the time we reach about 1 p.m. there on the 26th, you can see that we have a very potent cool down for the central United States, especially the north central, obviously, where we see about 15 to even maybe I would say 36 degrees below normal there. for a lot of the upper plains, and then even getting pretty close there to those Rocky Mountains as well. But generally, anywhere east of those Rocky Mountains for the plains is looking quite potent by this point. And then by the 28th, there at about 7 p.m., you can see that cooldown fully engulfs into the eastern United States, similar to what our European ensemble model was calling for. So we're seeing good agreement there. I feel good about that. We could be closing out the month on a very cold note. Notice I said could. The temperature anomalies here, according to the models, have fallen short in some cases, but I was looking a little bit further range when we were taking a look at that potential polar vortex. So I feel a little bit better about this, but still, considering the models have let me down, I want to take it with a grain of salt. And I want to remind you that there is still a chance. I don't know how big that chance is, but there is still a chance that this does not occur the way the models are calling for, as always. All right, now let's take a look at that AO, and generally when this is negative, we're taking a look at colder than normal conditions making their way into the United States, and you can see it stays negative across the board here according to our European ensemble model. So generally all the way through the beginning of February, it looks to stay negative, which means colder conditions should prevail basically for portions of the United States. And for the NAO, and this creates blocking basically for these snowstorms to move up the East Coast instead of just moving straight out to sea. And sometimes this encourages cold air in the eastern United States as well. This looks to stay negative across the board as well, according to this model. So that's another sign that we should have cold air. The PNA, however, look, it's positive until about the 20th, and then it's going to cross slightly negative, go pretty far negative around the 25th. Remember, we saw that colder air enter into the western United States for quite a while there, but then you can see it pops back towards neutral or even positive. That's when that cold air enters back into the eastern United States. So it's really cool to see it on a chart here. And we just looked at the surface map, so we're able to kind of translate what happened, and it just makes sense across the board what this model's calling for. Our EPO, and you can see this one goes negative, positive, negative, positive. That's going to indicate some pattern changes from west to east, and that is what we saw on the surface map as well. Anyways, for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, how do you think the rest of January is going to go? And Nicholas Forestel, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, said, I think it will be cold everywhere, but dry and relatively snowless to the north. And it does look quite dry, actually, at this point. We do see that one storm signal around the 26th that I've mentioned multiple times that I'm going to be posting on or I already did post on the Patreon page. But outside of that, there really isn't many storm signals. Some southern sliders will be possible, not guaranteed, but possible. Outside of those chances, it is looking relatively dry. That could generally change, and we do see that happen. But as of now, it does look quite dry. Anyway, for today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our platinum patrons: Sebastian Tao, John Benbenick, James Wade, Dovi Nagel, Alan Belemo, Adam S., Larry Lepan, Donna Carnes, and Cameron Marshall, and Aiden Mattis. Alongside our diamond patrons: Bill Roberts, Alan Sherry, Marcus Connolly, Noah Harley, Michael Codalesa, Michael Buell, Terry Curtis, Cat Bite, Charles Stinnett, Kellen Manhart, It's Jay, Cindy Klein, Alicia Davis, Mark J, and Luke Falego. If you would like to be on this Patreon end screen, you can do so by joining our very awesome Patreon page in the description and the pinned comment down below. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.